Welcome, everybody. I'm Dale Matchek. I'm the chair of the Econ program. I'm also the director of Northwood University's Freedom Seminar. And this is the 6th of our Fall Freedom Seminar series of lectures. It's a special one because it is also the OmniQuest lecture for the semester. And we have the author of our OmniQuest here with us today. So it's a very special night for us. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, the Freedom Seminar is a very special series. This year, the theme is about the economic issues of the 2024 election. And I think it was H.L. Mencken who gave us that wonderful quote about democracy. He said, "Democracy is the theory that the voters know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard." If you don't like the people that win the elections, we have nobody to blame but ourselves, right? We need to educate ourselves about the issues. We can't really expect our politicians to run if we don't reward them, or to do well if we don't reward them for giving us the kind of policies that make us better off. And when it comes to economic policies, it would seem like they're common sense, but they're really not. A lot of people have a lot of silly ideas about economics. It's kind of understandable. Sometimes economics can be boring. Sometimes economics can be a little obtuse. But, you know, we have with us tonight somebody who is doing a marvelous job of making economics not only easier to understand, of restoring a little bit of common sense, but also making it a lot of fun. So for those of you who have been reading his book, you know how delightful it is, how funny it is, but also how profound the lessons that you find in that book are. So I'm really excited about tonight. Now, if you're interested in more of these lectures, please join us again next week. We'll be in the McNair Center over at the Plaster Center, and that one is going to be about immigration. It's going to be a debate between those that want more of it and those that want to control it a little better. And that should be very interesting. And it's a controversial topic, but a timely one. And then after that, we have a couple of experts here to talk about climate change and energy policy. Again, that's in the McNair Center. That's coming up on October 8th and October 15th. So the whole schedule is online at Northwood Freedom Seminar. Just Google that and it'll take you to the website. And I hope you will join us again for some of the other series lectures that are coming up. In any case, tonight we have the OmniQuest lecture. And some of you may not be familiar with our OmniQuest program. I know many of you have been reading the book and doing the assignments, but to help tell us a little bit more about the OmniQuest program, I would like to call on Kristen Stayhauer, our university's academic vice president and provost. Dr. Stayhauer earned her doctorate in international relations from Northwestern University and completed her postgraduate work in education at Harvard. Her business career has focused on strategy formulation and implementation, continuous quality improvement, and she has worked with large and small corporations and organizations spanning many sectors. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Kristen Stayhauer.
Thank you, Dale. It's great to see a full house here in the Griswold Lecture Hall, and we know many are joining us via live streaming, so welcome to those who've joined us online. The OmniQuest program has been a distinctive part of Northwood University's culture for several decades now. And in the OmniQuest program, the Northwood community, faculty, students, staff, and alumni, we all read the same important book and engage in discussing and debating the concepts and its content over the course of a semester. Our fall selections focus on the Northwood idea, our distinctive philosophy here at Northwood University, and our spring selections focus on leadership and professional development. Annually, we put out a call for nominations. So we want you to be thinking about good books that you're reading that would be appropriate for this. And we receive dozens of nominations every year. And we have a committee of faculty and students who select the best of the best. In the case of our fall 2024 selection, we have the great fortune to host our author on campus as a joint OmniQuest and Freedom Seminar program, Ken Schoolland. Ken authored the fall OmniQuest selection, The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible, A Free Market Odyssey. And it's been published in over 90 editions and over 57 languages. Think about that reach. And it's been adapted into theatrical and musical productions across Africa, Europe, Latin America, and Asia. And most recently, an animated version showcased by our friends at the Free to Choose Network, many who are joining us online. And Ken also authored Shogun's Ghost, The Dark Side of Japanese Education. He's an associate professor of economics and formerly director of Entrepreneurship Center at Hawaii Pacific University. He's vice president for international relations at Liberty International, on the board of scholars of the Grassroot Institute of Hawaii, and a member of the Pelerin Society. He was director of the graduate program in Japanese business studies at Chaminade University in Honolulu, a professor of economics at Hakodate University in Japan, and at Sheldon Jackson College in Sitka, Alaska. He served as an international economist in the U.S. International Trade Commission, the U.S. Department of Commerce, and the U.S. Office of the Special Representative for Trade Negotiations in Washington, D.C. Tonight, we will have the special pleasure of hearing from Ken, but also his wife, Lee, whom he will give a more fulsome introduction. And she's an international educator, activist, and independent international educator, activist, and organizer. And we are very fortunate to hear from her as well. The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible rose to the top of the nominations to become this fall's OmniQuest selection, thanks to its enduring principles and timely call to action, which brings to mind the final words of Jonathan Gullible's guiding principles, in which he says, "Achieving a free society requires courage to think, to talk, and to act, especially when it is easier to do nothing." Thank you for that inspiring call to action, Ken. We're so thankful to have you and your wife, Lee, who've traveled all the way from Hawaii to bring this fall's OmniQuest selection to life. Please join me in formally welcoming Mr. Ken Schoolland.
Well, I think this works now. I'm very pleased to see you here, and I'm delighted here to be here myself. I was quite impressed that school, such as yours, is one that is so dedicated to free market principles and ideas. I really like that, and I'm impressed that you all are doing such a good job with that. As was said in the introduction, my wife and I have been very busy for a lot of years. I mean, ever since we got married, this is one of the reasons I decided to marry her, because she seemed to be right in tune with my ideas about freedom. She came from China, was born during the horrors of the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution in China. And she's going to comment later in this program about some of the experiences that she had that relate to the things that, that I'm going to be talking about here too. Along with our daughter, Kenley, who is, well, you may recognize that's the combination of our names. She's a very strong activist. She's promoting Freedom Fest and Alexander McCullough, Students for Liberty, and a lot of other people in the free market movement as well. And we've been involved with student liberty camps, conferences, seminars, translations and publications all around the world for many years. I think that I've done presentations along with my wife and in 60 countries, and she's done it in more. And most recently, she has organized seminars and conferences across China, and she just came back from the Mont Pelerin Society in India, Students for Liberty in Nepal, and conferences in Japan just in the last 3 weeks. So it's what keeps us busy. The book that was mentioned, I'm so pleased to be here to feature this book. It's The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible. We've got these languages that it's been published in, and I'd say that the nice thing about it is that it had a huge impact. This is one of my favorite quotes. When people say, have you made impact in other places? This from Adila just came across last year. We held a seminar with the Afghan Economic and Legal Studies Organization that was doing a lot of work in promoting free market ideas in Afghanistan for many years, but then recently everybody had to escape who was in the leadership. They're now in Toronto, Canada, but they organized an online seminar with the reading of Jonathan Gullible. And I was so pleased, I was so moved that 60 women who aren't allowed out of their homes in Afghanistan had to give up their great careers in all kinds of professions to just stay at home hiding, basically, because if they go out, they're in severe danger, not only themselves or their families. And then I had this online seminar with them because they still have internet connection. And you can see by the hands up, everybody's asking questions. Everybody was engaged. Just in this little book, The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible. And this is what Adila said. She said, I'm one of Afghanistan's defense lawyers, which she had to give up her profession to do now. I have been a member of the Academy for Economic Studies and Leadership for some time. I want to comment on the good book, A Free Market Odyssey. Before saying more, I would like to confess that tears flowed from my eyes when I was reading the book because I saw the people of my country line by line. I read the stories of the people of my country in most of the stories in this book. It seems like a children's book by the cover, and that's maybe a problem, or maybe it's an advantage, because it was the appearance, children's story, that got around the censors in Iran. The mullahs of Iran, who were carefully scrutinizing every kind of book that could possibly come across their desk for publication, they said, it's just a children's book, so they passed it on. A free market book that challenges all the principles and bases of that controlled society. And so maybe it's a good way to get around the censors, not only the official censors, but censors in the mind that put up obstacles to thinking about free markets and ideas. The book has been published in lots of languages. I'm pleased to say this is the Farsi edition, the first free market book published in Farsi. It was also published in Morocco, in China, in Vietnam, many times. It was the very first free market thing. In fact, I published the first free market book in Russia after the fall of the Iron Curtain. Why? Because, well, it's just a children's story. But it told people basically what property rights are, what freedoms are, what individual rights are. And these are ideas that have been, I'm pleased to say, kind of spreading around the world. This is the Bengali edition, the Hindi edition. Maybe this points out, yeah, the Hindi edition, the Bengali edition, I didn't even remember what that one was. This is the Vietnamese edition. These are groups that met, both university groups and youth groups in India, digesting the ideas about free markets. This is the Thai edition. She produced the Braille edition. These are 6 editions in Pakistan, 3 in Urdu, 2 in Sindhi, 1 in Baluch. They were produced by the Alternate Solutions Institute. And I asked Khalid Ahmad, the winner of our Torch of Freedom Award for Liberty International, I said, should I go there and visit? And he says, no, it's too dangerous for you to come. Don't come. Let's just keep using your book to spread the ideas. I had a friend of mine, a student of mine actually from Russia, say that I'm asking him, is it available in Russia? Because we had a Russian edition, a translation made in Belarus, but I wasn't sure if anyone was using it in Russia. He went online, he found it in 17 publishers and online organizations were publishing and distributing the book all around Russia. Of course, I knew nothing about it, but I was delighted. I didn't feel any problem at all about it. I'm delighted that the ideas are being spread in this manner. Nodar published the book in Georgia, the second edition. The first edition was here, and the second edition was here. He does online interviews on YouTube that he produces. And then he took the book after publishing it all to all the high schools around Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, not the state of Georgia. And then we've also done these at Liberty camps in Georgia. It was picked up by the Somali Voice, published the book in Somali, and then in Kenya, this is in Burundi, and they printed a French edition. I'm very pleased to say that in Nigeria, they produced a play from the book, and they said, well, people aren't really reading it so much. Young people don't read so much anymore, but they do like to go to the theater. And so they produced, with a cast of 25, a theatrical production that went to universities, 5 universities in Nigeria and Ghana, to spread the ideas. And this is also the cover of or a poster from the Portuguese edition that was produced in Brazil. It was also produced as a musical production in 2 places, one in Slovakia, so that it was distributed to all the high schools, in a theatrical production in Slovakia, and Ludmila Melnikova produced it for certain scenes, certain episodes, into a musical production in Kazakhstan, which she took on the road to an international competition in Finland. I'm pleased to say that it's won numerous awards for economics and for excellence in economics education. The endorsement of Milton Friedman, Walter Williams, Walter Block, John Stossel, and Mark Skousen. We've also won numerous awards from people who have been put together international readers groups. Every month we have an international readers group where people who are interested in the book come together and talk about ideas, basically to talk about how things are going in their countries. Now, why? Why? Because I've told people time and time again, whenever someone asks me, what do you do? I say, well, I teach economics. They usually say, I had a horrible experience with that. I hate economics. I can't stand economics. But why? Economics should be one of the most interesting things because it's something that affects all of us, the whole life. I consider it a study of values, a study of values. And why shouldn't that be interesting to people? But it isn't. It's usually boring, confusing, and wrong. This is my 2 favorite covers of the Economist magazine. Used to be a fairly good magazine. Now it's not as, I'm not so fond of it. But one thing that they were really truthful about was that economics was miserable. Gave a very bad impression about the world, and wrong advice, I felt. From a free market perspective, I felt that most major sources of the media and all were giving a very bad name to free markets, and not an even shake to the importance of individual rights and property rights and the others. So I started this radio commentary. As you may recall, we last left Jonathan Gullible on a remote Pacific island after his boat was tossed about by a terrific storm. Doing radio commentary was of no use if I'm just going to be talking about, well, boring economics. But if you turn it into a dialogue and a friendly adventure, well, people's ears perk up, especially when it's humor and satire. Throughout history, people have been fascinated with humor and satire. The most important effect is that it gets around the censors. And that's something that's throughout history. You'll notice that lots and lots of great writers through history have been people who use satire to say things that people couldn't otherwise talk about in their countries. Even today, we find that the commentary that young people listen to is from satirical reviews of the news rather than serious commentary, because they don't really believe the serious commentary. I'm fascinated with the use of humor in China. My wife can talk about this a lot more, but you notice that there was a whole movement where people weren't allowed to speak against the government. So they just held up posters, a little piece of paper with words on it. And then that was disallowed. So then they held up blank sheets of paper. And that was just as funny, even more funny, because people knew this means that you're not allowed to speak, but everybody knows what you're saying anyway. And then that was made illegal for you to hold up the pieces of paper. So they just put their hands up like this, because everybody knew that they still were holding the piece of paper and saying the same thing. And no matter what the tyranny would be to try and repress something, people always had ways around it. Making fun of Xi Jinping, the president of China, by commenting that he looked like Winnie the Pooh. They outlawed Winnie the Pooh in China. Now, my favorite authors have been Jonathan Swift, who wrote Gulliver's Travels, which this is a bit of a parallel to, and The Little Prince. The Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupéry. How many people have ever read The Little Prince? How many people ever read the Gulliver's Travels? Okay, a few. Well, I recommend them. Maybe not in the original version for Gulliver's Travels, but it's rather old English. But Little Prince is very readable and very profound. It gave me the idea that very, very important and profound ideas can be conveyed in simple and an entertaining way, and with questions, not preaching, but with questions that point out the folly of the way things were. One of my favorite books of all time is Hammer and Tickle. Has anyone ever read Hammer and Tickle? It's been made into a CD movie too, a film, a documentary. Now, what is it about? Jokes that brought down the Soviet Union. The one thing that tyrants really hate more than anything isn't to have a protest against them, isn't to have people shoot at them. It's to be laughed at. Tyrants hate to be mocked. And that's what satire and humor have done for centuries. And the great thing about it is that it undermines those authorities. And of course, there's a long history of trying to put down the humor as well. In Hammer and Tickle, the whole book is about jokes that people told during the era of the Soviet Union and all the controls. One of the jokes, there's a guy, he's meeting in the Gulag prison way out in Siberia with another guy, and he says, how long you in for? 10 years. Really? What for? I was lazy. Lazy? That's usually only 5 years. Yeah, but this time was different. Well, how can you be gone 10 years for prison? Well, my buddy and I were drinking vodka one evening, telling all kinds of jokes about Stalin. And then when the evening was over, I went home and went to bed. I said, I'll report him in the morning. But my friend, he reported me that night. So I got the 10 years for telling jokes, and he got favored because he didn't, he turned me in. Because in those days, you could not only get prison for telling a joke about Stalin, you got prison for laughing at the joke and having it reported. You got prison for not reporting laughing at your joke. I mean, that's how serious people took it. Now, of course, that can put a damper on humor, but human spirit is such that people always want to laugh at stupidity. And there's nothing more stupid than trying to control and ruin other people's lives. My wife knows about this. This is a picture of my wife when she was, well, maybe even a little younger than you guys, and her family. Her father was a surgeon. Her mother was an English professor at Nankai University, and her brother. Her father made a comment during surgery about Mao's wife that sounded a little bit like a joke or something. And the next day, he was off to prison for a year, hard labor. And then the whole family was exiled to the southern provinces for 10 years. And the stories that they have to tell of a time in Russia and in China when over 50 million people died from the stupid policies of Mao Zedong. And I call them stupid. I'm sorry, it's impolite to use that words, but it's so well deserved. It needs to be said about the horrible times of those eras. A lot of people have commented about the power and value of humor, but let me just mention some of the things that why dictators don't like jokes. For one, it reveals their folly. Another, it breaks the fear, because when people are laughing, it's pretty hard to be fearful if others around you are just laughing at that policy. It builds confidence in the opposition because you're gaining courage from the other people around you. It attracts laughtivists, jokes are contagious. If you've got a joke, then the next person wants to come up with one better. And if it's against the tyrant, then you can make it about them. It prompts a clumsy response. Usually tyrants don't know how to respond to tyranny, to humor. And so their response to trying to control it just makes it more laughable. Like holding up your hands like this because it was outlawed to put a piece of paper to. It's called the A4 because the size of the paper was called the A4 size. So it was called the A4 protest. And it undermines authority, and it passes the censors. And I'm reminded of George Orwell's greatest quote. George Orwell in 1984 and other books criticizing tyranny says, "Every joke is a tiny revolution." Next, my approach is in questions. Jonathan doesn't go through telling people what they did right or what they did wrong. He just simply asks questions to reveal the folly of questions. Hey, maybe we could see the, shoot, we don't have, well, could we run a little bit of the first episode that I wanted to show up there, just the trailer of the film to give you an idea of the film. And then I'll tell you about what one of the stories is going to be.
Jonathan, wake up.
Huh? What was that? This island keeps getting stranger.
I thought you might not be from Karumpo.
Who's Karumpo?
This whole island is Karumpo.
Hey! Huh?
Welcome to Karumpo's Two Sous.
Whoa, whoa! Huh? So, are you coming?
All the way through, Jonathan is just simply asking questions. He doesn't tell people what is right or wrong. He asks them, and through their questions, he gets them to reveal really stupid things, bad policies, and contradictions. And that's the same thing with The Little Prince. I don't know if you ever, well, those of you who read that know what I'm talking about. So questions are raised in the book and answered throughout. And also, I think since this is a business university, entrepreneurship is your gig, I would suggest that you think about this as a media to pick up on. There's lots of economic opportunities for employment through filmmaking. Could we run the other one about the creation of the film? Let's see. Film clip number 2. Can we do film clip number 2? Yeah, there we go.
How we create an episode of The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible. It all begins with the script. After the writers exchange ideas and shape the script, it undergoes approval, and the 5 phases of pre-production are initiated. Storyboard. A storyboard serves as a visual representation of how a story unfolds, scene by scene. It comprises a chronological series of images accompanied by notes, acting as a roadmap guiding the storytelling journey from start to finish. Background design. Background design, encompassing both drawing and painting, establishes the stage and atmosphere for a scene in the entire setting. Character design. Character design involves the creation of characters for animated productions. Starting as a concept, the designer sketches, colorizes, and generates the character's turnaround. Voice recording. Once the character traits are defined, the voices that bring them to life and express their essence are recorded. We guide the actors to ensure their voices capture the character's core. Music composition. Composers write original music tailored for the animation, reflecting and communicating the atmosphere, character emotions, and the story. With the storyboard, voices, and music in place, the animatic editing process begins. An animatic is a rough visual preview of the animation, synchronized with voiceover and/or music, showcasing timing, pacing, and frame compositions. With character design finalized, the process moves to rigging. Digital rigs, akin to virtual bones, joints, and muscles, enable models to move. Riggers create individual elements and hundreds of control points for animators to use in creating poses. Once the animatic is approved, shots are separated and sent to animators, along with the rigged characters and backgrounds, marking the commencement of animation production. Upon completing animation and incorporating backgrounds, the focus shifts to scene composition. This process arranges visual elements within a frame or scene to create depth, lighting, visual effects, and dimensionality, entering the post-production phase. Finally, with all takes composed and edited, the project proceeds to sound post-production. Audio post-production encompasses various stages, including sound design, sound effects, Foley, ADR, sound editing, audio mixing, and mastering. And now we can say we completed an episode of The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible.
Okay, thanks. Can I go back to
Building your online business?
Okay. But of course, the most important thing for me is the message. The message comes from not my own, well, I did a lot to adapt things, some innovative things of my own. But my ideas were from my reading, some of my favorite authors over time. David Friedman, who's been here to speak, and his parents, Milton and Rose Friedman, which you'll find as characters in the book as well. Ludwig Mises, Murray Rothbard, Walter Williams, Francois Canet, Hayek, Smith, Locke, Dostoevsky, Lao Tzu, the first real free market guy thousands of years ago in China, Aristotle, Ayn Rand, Walter Block, Julian Simon, Henry Hazlitt, Friedrich Bastiat, the great innovator of innovation in humor with satirizing the policies, and Henry David Thoreau. A lot of these ideas then were worked into the story to try and convey what I consider a very valuable lesson about free markets. I draw a lot on the work of the Fraser Institute in Canada, which categorizes all the countries of the world by degrees of economic freedom. And economic freedom has been proven to be very, very, very successful. It's not only practical in producing enormous amount of wealth, but it's also humane because it brings enormous benefits to the people of society. And lastly, and most importantly to me, it's ethical because it's voluntary action among human beings rather than the coercive behaviors of government. So I take those things and I put them into the story with all the various humorous stories and tales that can be told. I try to weave all of the messages of these characters into the Adventures of Jonathan Gullible. And at the end of this, I'd like to raise one chapter, which I consider probably one of the most profound chapters of the book, chapter 36, about the Grand Inquirer, which is a parody of the Grand Inquisitor from Dostoevsky's book, raising the very, very fundamental question, do people really want freedom from do they want freedom to have responsibility, or do they want freedom from responsibility? And to anticipate that, I'd like to invite my wife to come up here and talk a little bit about this notion of freedom and responsibility that she experienced in the life of some of the horrors of China during the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution, even today.
So happy to see all of you here. And probably you look at me in front of you, you may think this old lady dressed funny or very colorful. My girlfriend called me a Christmas tree. And I was a high school teacher and at the Baptist high school. You get the image. And my colleagues always ask me, Mrs. Schoolland, why do you like to wear high heel? You're fashion visa, they call me. And I said, no, I dress like this just because I can. I have lived 26 years in China. I had no freedom on what kind of clothes I want to wear, what color, what hairstyle, what to eat, where to live, what to study, what job I can have, who I can marry to. I had zero freedom. So now I'm in the United States of America, one of the freest countries in the world. I can put whatever on me. And so I do this to remind myself I have this freedom just because I can. And I don't care whatever other people say. And I'm celebrating freedom. Today in the world, a lot of people still don't have the freedom like you all and I enjoy today. In Afghanistan, in China, 1.4 billion people, they don't have this freedom. So freedom is not free and it's not here forever. So if we don't do anything to protect it, to fight, we will lose it in no time. Today is the 75th anniversary of China. The communist China took over and started a new country called the People's Republic of China in 1949, October 1st. From that day on, all the Chinese people lost not only their properties, their dignities, their freedom. They became the slave of a small group of elites. And just overnight, it happened. Do people want freedom? I don't know about you, but my family, my parents never think I have grown up. Even after I turned 60, they will still tell me, don't stay up too late. Come home early. Eat your breakfast. Maybe you don't have that kind of parents or grandparents, but I do. And our country, the leaders of our country think that way too. They treat us like children. We cannot make our own decisions. We don't know what's good for us. We don't know eat healthy. We don't know we need to do exercise. We don't know we need enough sleep. Maybe you don't think the government is that way, because in this country, some people, the politicians or government workers, they call themselves the servants of the public servants. True or not true, but at least they think that way. But in China, they call themselves the parents of the people. So what the parents do? They tell you what to do. They think for you. They make decisions for you. So I was born in 1958 when China had just about 10 years into the new communist country. By then, all the private properties were nationalized. And homes, factories, stores, and everything. And the government planned the whole entire economy of the country and make decisions for everybody. My grandparents had a home in Shanghai. It's not a very big home, just very modest. One living room, one dining room, and I think 2 bedrooms and 1.5 baths. They said, that's too much for you. You cannot live that big space. So they put another family of 6 people, 4 children, 2 parents, into our home. And then later they put another family of 3 into our home, just that little space, because government decide how much you need to live. They said 2 square meters per person. That's efficient, just enough you can lay down. So if you have more than 2 square meters per person in your house, they will move other people into your home. That's very, very common. And earlier I shared with some of your students, the government decide you get shower once a week, you get haircut once a month for guys. Girls don't even get haircut. And you have to wear certain colors of your clothes and certain style, and you never can move. The house government give it to you, supposedly for free, but very, very tiny spaces. And then if you say, I want to move to another apartment or another city or anything, no, you don't have the freedom. And usually they only allow you to marry somebody in your same town or in your same place and with the same kind of class. If you happen to marry somebody not from your, you don't live in the same cities, they allow you twice a year vacation to visit each other, which means you can, they dictate your bedrooms. They dictate your private lives. And the most known situation that how they dictate your life is one-child policy. Y'all heard about that. Each family could only have one child. It started in 1970s and ended about 5 years ago. And was very, very brutal. And I heard stories like the forced abortion of women. They have a classroom size, like a warehouse, and all the women forcibly have the surgery and put them on the ground in this room, bleeding and screaming and crying with pain, all by force, because one guy up there decided human beings are burden to the society. So too many human beings are bad for our lives. They take away the natural resources. If too many people, there's not going to be enough food, and these nonsense. And so they blame the Chinese poverty and poor, the entire country are poor. They blame the too many people. Actually, the true reason for China to be poor is because the communists believe. At the beginning, the communists told people, we're for equality. We're for fairness. It's not fair somebody has land, have money, and somebody don't have land and poor. So we want to help the poor. At the time, China was an agricultural country, and 80% of people were farmers. So a lot of them were poor. So they heard this communist idea. They thought, wow, great. The government is going to give us land. We're going to be landowners. For no reason, we don't have to work hard to get land. So they all went to support the communists. Then communists got a lot of support and won over the capitalists. And in 1949, they took over the country. The first thing they did was took over everybody's land. And the poor people was waiting to get land. And but the government didn't. Kept their promise, didn't redistribute the wealth and the property and to everybody. They kept it because they said, we know better how to use this land, and we know better than you how to feed yourself, how to live your lives. So we need to tell you, and you need to listen to us. Then people was trusted the government will provide for them. Think about it. When you take away somebody's producing, like somebody's, your father is a farmer, your land got taken away. Are you happy to keep working hard to produce? No. And your factory, your shops, all taken away. So you have no incentive to work, because when you had the bank account, the government took all the money from your bank. That happened to our family. My family was a top 1% at the beginning of last century. They were industrialists, they were entrepreneurs, and they have banks and factories and businesses. It's all taken away, and some of them put in prison. And one of my relatives was in prison and ended up starved to death in prison because he was just a chief engineer, studied in the United States in a mining company. Those are the crimes. So there's nobody want to produce, nobody want to do anything, because if you do anything, you make wealth, you create wealth, then you end up in prison or getting executed. So nobody produce, everybody consuming. Where does government get any of these things? So very soon, in 1950, the end of 1950s, and 1960, 61, 63, entire China, everybody equally poor, and everybody was starving. One record shows the average intake of calorie of everybody in China was much lower than the average calorie intake in Auschwitz, the German Nazi concentration camp. And I was growing up watching people died starvation on the sidewalk, street. Nobody even have energy to pick them up. And they punished the educated people, especially educated outside of China, and brought technology and knowledge back to China. They're the first one to get punished, because those people thought we learned so much advanced knowledge, we go back to home and we contribute. And they're the first one to get punished. How they punished it, there's not enough prison in China. So they send them to a very, very remote place. The ground grow nothing. And just let them find a way to survive or just die. And they end up eating each other. This book documented all these true stories, and it's forbidden to publish in China. And that site today is forbidden for people to even visit, because you go there, you see nothing but skeleton bones over there. What their crime was? Being educated, have knowledge, learned. Because the communists most afraid is people who can think and who want to think and willing to think for themselves. They want everybody think only one way. It's the leader, supreme leader's way of thinking. In the past, when I was living there under Chairman Mao, was that, and today under Xi Jinping, it became that way again. You can't think independently, you cannot think differently. So how to prevent people think independently and differently is through education. They control the education. What you can read, what you can study. And you're so privileged. You can choose what you want to study. You choose to come to this university, you choose to study economics or management. This freedom is not enjoyed by a lot of people in the world still. And recently, a lot of times you choose president and choose parties, and based on who can give you more free things, free education, free Medicare, free this, free that. Where do those free things come from? Government don't produce. They take it from other people and give it to you. They take your parents' hard-earned money through taxation and give it to you for free. Free things are the most expensive things. In China, when we lived there, seems like we all got free housing, free Medicare, and free everything, but we don't get almost anything. Because they just simply take from A to give it to B. After you take from A and give it to B, A have nothing anymore. And B consumed everything. Then B and A both have nothing. 1950s, they make collective farm. No, independent farmers were not allowed anymore. So they call communes. After that, they said, it's not good to eat by yourself. It's not fair because you may be eating better than she would. So turn in all your food, all edible things, to the commune. Then we will have a cafeteria to feed everybody. Everybody will be equal. So people unwillingly turn in all their edible things. Some hid their things. I just heard a story recently. This family, they're kind of rich, so they have salt. Other people didn't have salt. So they put salt in the bamboo and put in between the walls in the bricks. Secretly add some salt to their food. But anyways, most people, if you don't, they forcibly search your house and take all the things. The first 2 weeks was very happy. Everybody was like holidays, New Year's, ate very well. You didn't need to cook. You didn't need to think. You didn't need to ration your food. Just eat as much as you can because food are free. So everybody just stuff themselves. Soon all the food are gone. And what happened? And the government thought, oh, we don't have enough food. Okay, now we tell everybody to tighten your belt. When you tighten your belt, your stomach kind of got tight in, then you're not eating a lot. By the way, just last year, Xi Jinping told every Chinese, let's tighten our belt again. Now you can understand what Chinese economy is going right now. So we're asked to tighten our belt again. The young people didn't understand, but for us, tighten our belt again now. So after tightening the belt for a little short time, they said we need to diversify our food. We don't only eat wheat and rice and corns. Let's eat everything else that's edible. So they start teaching. They have a teaching program to teach people how to get the bark out of a tree. So you can eat the bark. And they will educate kids like me to identify which grass or plant is edible. I still have a bad habit. I walk like this, and I will see, oh, this is edible. And that was funny. 2 years ago, I was in Prague, Czech Republic. My girlfriend and I, we were visiting a famous place. We suddenly say, oh, these are good vegetables. Let's get some and go home, make dumplings. And we still have that kind of habit of thinking because we don't let go anything that's edible. And after all the grass and the tree barks are gone, clays. People start eating clays. And the ashes from the burning incense in the temples. Anything that doesn't kill us, we ate. Now people make fun of Chinese. They say, oh, they eat anything, can fly except airplane. They eat everything with legs except table and chairs. Why was that? Because we were hungry, we were starving. My brother used to go find land mice, the little mice, and roast it and eat it. And because even though the government promised you get certain amount of food from you're born, each year increase a little bit, boys and get a little bit more than girls. And but still, a lot of times wasn't real food. And if you read the book called by Frank de Coster, he's a German, I think. He wrote some very good books about the history of China during that period of time. And do I have time? Yeah. Is it?
Go ahead and finish that thought. I'm going to go ask this question about the people walk through it.
Yeah. And so when people are starving, the grown-ups still can hold it, but the kids start to go steal food. They may grab some grains from the warehouse of the commune, and one kid just pull out a plant with some roots and chew on it. And that was crime because the plants belong to the government. It doesn't belong to you. And that was a 9-year-old child. They ordered the father of the child to bury that child alive. And because they didn't have bullets to execute people, and they just bury people alive, that's very fashionable. And after the father died in front of the whole villagers, he became crazy, of course. And so that's when the government promised you equality, promised you free things. And here you haven't get to that stage yet. You don't know. But more you ask for government to give you, you're getting closer to what the socialist and communist is. And so do people want freedom? Right now in the border between Mexico and United States, there's a so-called problem. A lot of illegal immigrants came in. Guess what? Huge percentage of them are not Mexicans or Latin Americans, they're Chinese. Chinese are find a way to any of the Latin American countries and Panama, whatever, and they walk through the jungles and to the Mexican border and cross the border. We call it walk the line right now. It's very, very popular. Those people are not poor anymore. A lot of them had a lot of money to pay the human traffickers to come, risking their lives. I knew so many of them. Some came underground, some came in and willingly put in prison and even prison is better than back home, they told me. Only complaint is the food is always beans, not enough rice in prison. And some are slept in, they put a box in between the engine and the bottom of the car, and he was in there like this for hours and got smuggled in. Why? Because they want freedom. They want to be the owner of their lives. They want to be grown-ups. They don't want the government treat them like a child and tell them they know nothing. They don't know how to live their own lives.
Good. Well, this also brings up a question that I want to pose to you. I first thought of adding this to the Jonathan Gullible because I thought it was a very profound question to ask. Now, in the story of Brothers Karamazov, there's a chapter called The Grand Inquisitor. The Spanish Inquisition was, of course, prosecuting heresy and blasphemy among anyone that wasn't a believer according to the doctrines of the Catholic Church at the time. And people were put to death wholesale. And the Grand Inquisitor then spies, there's a stranger out in the crowd, and he sees that this is Jesus come back in the story. And so he has him arrested and takes him into jail. He says, I'm going to have you killed. And then later he lets him go. But they have this long, long discussion. He says, people don't want you. They don't really want the freedom that you offer. They want to have the burden of responsibility, the burden of life lifted from them and have decisions made for them. And so that's why I made this same kind of parallel to the idea in The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible, to pose this very important question. So I'd like to hear from somebody here. What do you think? Do you think that the people around you that you know in town and around the country, wherever you're from, are they people who really want freedom? I mean, we talk about freedom and promoting freedom, but maybe people don't want it, because along with freedom comes the responsibility of making choices and decisions, and you can be wrong. But of course, if somebody else makes those decisions, you can't be wrong because somebody else is responsible. Do people really want freedom or not? What do you think? Is there anybody here that's got a comment? Yeah, please.
I think people may fall into the
Wait a minute. Here, could you take the mic? Yeah.
I think people maybe fall into the trap of wanting freedom, but then also expecting other people to take care of them, specifically the government.
Mm-hmm.
So they might, introduce or encourage the government to be more involved so that they can feel like they have freedom, but still, take advantage of what the government, they feel the government should be responsible for.
Do you think that they think that they're still free, but that they're just, do they still feel free, or do they not even question it?
I mean, it depends, obviously, depending on your views. If the government controls something that you don't deem as important, you still may feel like you're free. So it really depends on the person.
Okay. Here's a Jonathan Gullible pen, because you're a good questioner. Yeah. Anybody else have any comment on this thought? Do you have any thoughts or questions about China and about the circumstance there? Yeah.
Because there's strings.
So you feel for obviously the people who are coming into the US, they want freedom, and obviously we feel bad for them, but what do you think is a valid solution to being able to let people in? Because obviously we can't just let a bunch of immigrants into the US, but how do we take care of people and look out for their want of freedom? Or do you understand what I'm saying? Yes. How do you think that we could achieve freedom for people?
That's an immigration topic you'll have next week. Yeah. And why people want to leave home? I think most of your ancestors were not from the United States, not the Native Americans. They all came for one reason or another, mostly economic reasons. Some are political reasons, and nobody really wants to leave home, where they know everybody, they know the language, they know the culture, they have a home. Why they abandoned all that and traveled and risked their lives to leave their comfort zone? It's for a reason. So for us as human beings, we shouldn't block them from seeking a better life, whatever it means. My uncle hid himself underneath a boat and smuggled himself to Hong Kong from China in 1952 because he just saw horror of communism getting worse and worse. So he did it. He went to Brazil, ended up in Brazil, but my parents didn't. And we end up suffering all the inhumane tortures and the imprisonment and the starvation and everything. So I think the problem is not the immigrants. The problem is our government policy. Like currently, a lot of so-called refugees, immigrants, legally or illegally into many countries. And a lot of people thought there are problems. But in Germany, for example, they were not allowed to work. What can they do? They're waiting for the government handout. They're not the taxpayers. So the local taxpayers, of course, are not happy. We're paying tax and feed you, you do nothing. Is it their problem? No. If they're allowed to work, they will be able to make a good life for themselves. I knew so many people like that. You all heard this very famous architect called, his name is I.M. Pei. He did the pyramid in front of the Louvre in Paris. He's Chinese. And when China reopened, he went back to his village. There's about 60 of his relatives all came to visit him. They all really poor because that was late of 1970, like 79. And they all wear like very bad clothes and they were starved. They all came to visit him. He's very famous already, very rich. And he told his relatives, he said, if I did not leave China, I will be just like you. If any of you left China, you will be just like me. That tells a lot. The system. So don't look at the so-called immigrant, refugee, or illegal. The problem is the government policy. And I hope next week you will have a lot of discussion on open border and immigration. Because I came here, I didn't become a burden of this society, but I was legally came in as a student. I have a student visa, but if we didn't get married, I probably became illegal. I didn't change. I didn't change from a good person, legal person, to an illegal person. The system made things happen like that. So they're all human beings. And in God's eyes, they are the same, equal like anybody else. So let them have the equal opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to say, if there are more questions,
Yeah.
Noel has the microphone. Raise your hand. Feel free to use it and ask a question. Make your comment.
Yeah, here's another comment here. Yeah.
Nobody will put you in prison if you ask a question.
So I'm specifically curious, you've been to a lot of countries, you've spoken to a lot of people, given a lot of presentations. What country that you visited do you think was the most impactful, that you had the best experience at, or even, the audience you were talking to, they had a profound kind of understanding of what you were saying?
I think biggest impact for me was that experience that I related to, that I wasn't even in Afghanistan. My wife went twice, but I'd say the reaction that I got from the women there who were the most oppressed were the ones that gave me the greatest sense of accomplishment, that having reached them. But a lot of countries, I'd have to say, with regard to this general topic, the marketplace views people as an opportunity. governments view people as a problem. And their attitude is a very, very different attitude of courage and fear. So those are very impactful things. The idea of keeping somebody out has the same effect as keeping somebody in. It doesn't matter which side of the border somebody stands, the effect can be the same. Now, I don't mind keeping bad guys out, but don't treat everybody collectively on the basis of one being bad guy, 99 being bad because they're associated with the same race or nationality.
Yeah, I have some cases like we were in Kyrgyzstan, and this young man named Mr. Jiang, and he learned from us, and then he ended up have an initiative. Eventually, after, I don't know, 15, 20 years of trying, he got Kyrgyzstan to privatize their airport as a very big achievement. And also this one guy, Yaqub from Azerbaijan, after being in our camps and learned that he can be an entrepreneur. So he did. And now today he's a millionaire. And also the guy who translated Ken's book and Ayn Rand's book in Russian, and he became one of the richest person in Russia. Started with blue jeans business in the supermarket. Now he's wanted by Putin. You have to run because he's too powerful. And we impact a lot of individuals that way. That's what we want to do. We're not changing the government, like have a coup or coup d'etat and things like that. Some of our friends were trying to do that, but we're not. But we change individual minds, and we see things happen around the world.
I think we've probably come to a good time for closing up because it's warm in here. Some of you are restless to go to the bathroom and or to get some refreshments, but it's my understanding that there are some refreshments, Dale, is that correct?
That's correct. So there's a dessert afterglow set up out there for you all. And if you want to continue your discussion, then we'll be joining you out there momentarily. So please stick around. And if you didn't sign up sheets will be there. But don't block the exit, please. As you wait to sign up, make room for people to exit. And thank you for being here.